as good as our legal system is, it's very hard to navigate if you're a layperson. And lawyers are the bridge that let you do that, to navigate the legal system.
Hello and welcome to the Attorney Post, where we give you the inside scoop with top attorneys in their field. And now, here's our host, Justin West.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Attorney Post, where we discuss what's going on in various facets of the law with attorneys at the top of their game to help you navigate the ins and outs of various legal fields and jurisdictions. Because, as I always say, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. Today, I'm very pleased to be joined by Rob Katz, who runs the eponymous law firm that bears his name, Katz Personal Injury Law, which also has a secondary name, Katz and, give it to me.
Katz and Fleming.
Fleming. I had that written down somewhere and I couldn't see it off the top of my head. So, how are you doing today, Rob?
I'm great. How are you doing, Justin?
I am doing very, very good. And I want to thank you again in front of all my listeners. Rob was very polite and willing to bump our interview time up a little bit for the sake of a prior obligation that I had. So thank you very much for that. Well, before we begin, let's jump over and take a look at your website. Again, I'm talking with Rob Katz of Katz and Fleming. That is Robert N. Katz, KATZ.com. We'll have a link, as always, in the description below. You can also reach them by calling 888-426-2100. We'll also have that available in the description below. Katz Personal Injury Lawyer, or Katz and Fleming, is a full-service injury law firm based out of the Atlanta, Georgia area, with at least, I believe, 2, if not more, locations than that. And we're going to dig into all of that here shortly when we talk with Rob. Before we get started, as always, we are also going to read from our sponsors. Our first sponsor today is an old sponsor that just returned, Groove Funnels. Entrepreneurs and dream chasers, listen up. Running an online business doesn't have to mean drowning in subscriptions or wrestling with messy tech. Groove is rolling out a jaw-dropping limited-time offer. You can run your entire operation. Think stunning websites with Groove pages, high-converting sales funnels, email campaigns, e-commerce stores, even affiliate programs, all completely free for an entire year. No credit card required upfront. That's right. For over 1 million users already are using Groove as their go-to choice to save thousands and scale their businesses smarter. And this all-in-one platform basically replaces all the tools that you would use, tools like ClickFunnels, Shopify, and more. There's no risk, there's no hidden fees, just pure, powerful growth tools to help you focus on what matters, building your empire. But again, hurry, this deal won't last forever. Jump in right now and see why Groove is the secret weapon for every entrepreneur that they need in 2025 and beyond. Visit theattorneypost.com/groove to sign up for free today for an entire year. Again, no credit card needed, and if you can't make it profitable, then you never have to pay. So there's literally nothing to lose. Go to theattorneypost.com/groove today. We'll have a link to that down below in the description as well. Our second sponsor is Rank with News. I got to find my reader here. Is not being found in the news regularly costing your firm or your business credibility and visibility? Do you feel that getting found in Google is more about dumb luck than it is science? What if there was a guaranteed way to get your law firm or your business featured in major national publications like Yahoo News, Bloomberg, Reuters, Forbes, Business Insider, and more, and seeing those articles ranking locally, nationally, sometimes in under 8 hours for major competitive keywords that people are actually looking for? What else would you need to know? Rank with News is simply the most powerful way to hit page 1 in under 2 weeks safely, organically, and often permanently. It's like guaranteed SEO, or search engine optimization, on steroids, ranking quickly and sticking long term. If you're tired of poor visibility for your business or firm, visit rankwith.news to learn more or book a time to speak with a specialist about featuring your firm or your business in major national 8- and 9-figure traffic sites that can launch you to page 1 in a matter of hours. Get media exposure, rank higher in Google, build credibility, and win more customers and clients with rankwith.news. Alrighty. Well, I am, as I said, very pleased to be joined by Rob Katz, who is on the masthead over there at Katz and Fleming. Rob Katz is the founder of Katz Personal Injury Law, or Katz and Fleming, a nationally recognized attorney with over 25 years of experience advocating for clients in car, truck, and motorcycle accidents, as well as medical malpractice, wrongful death cases, etc. Prior to starting his own firm, Rob gained invaluable experience working for insurance companies, which has given him a unique perspective in representing individuals against large corporations. Rob's commitment to the legal profession is reflected in his leadership roles, including the past president of the DeKalb Bar Association, and his numerous awards such as Top 100 Georgia Super Lawyers, etc. He has been recognized by Newsweek as a leader in the personal injury law industry and maintains a 10 out of 10 rating with AVO as well. He's also recently been certified as a mediator and arbitrator, adding to the skills and tools that he brings to the table. And above all, Rob's focus remains on helping his clients move forward after difficult events, ensuring that they receive the justice and the compensation that they deserve. Now, that was a mouthful, and I'm sure it barely even scratched the surface. So, Rob, my very first question to you, as always, is what did I miss?
Well, I think you maybe get a good summary of my background and everything. I think what we think about, when we have a client, new client, existing client, what have you, is we think about them as a human being first, and that's how we like to engage at the law firm. So, you can't write that on a page. You have to sense it and feel it. But most important to us is making sure the client is comfortable, understand that we understand what they've been through, and that we're there to help, deal with for very difficult situations.
Gotcha. No, I mean that makes perfect sense, and that's the heart of what you do at the end of the day. And it really is. It's one person at a time, always connecting with them and just making that connection, which is great. Well, let me
Absolutely.
ask you this. I did a little bit of pre-research on you. Obviously, I've looked at your website. I know that you do PI law, but if I didn't know anything about you, if you and I were in an elevator and we had 30 seconds as we're going up to the top floor, or whatever, and I was like, "Oh, hey, Rob, what do you do?" Give me your pitch. Tell me about Katz and Fleming. Tell me about your firm. Who do you help? Where are they located? Why do they choose you?
Sure. So we help people who have been catastrophically injured. So generally, folks who either they've had surgeries, they've suffered a brain injury, or unfortunately, they had a loved one who's died. So those are the nature and the type of cases that we handle. We're in the Atlanta area, but we work not just statewide throughout Georgia, of course, but we also work pretty much nationwide. So litigated cases up in New York, litigated cases North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida. So pretty much anywhere where you've suffered a catastrophic injury, we're willing to go and to assist you. That's kind of, we don't like to limit the territory, so to speak, because we can practice pretty much anywhere.
Sure. Okay. Well, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. What got you into law? Is this something that you kind of stumbled into? Was this like a midlife crisis that led you into law? Or did you just grow up knowing, watching Perry Mason and you're just like, that's what I want to do. I want to do law. And then what got you into PI? Because I know you started on the opposite side as a defense. And it's funny because I talk to a lot of PI attorneys, personal injury attorneys, who follow that trajectory, and I find it fascinating. It's like you defend Goliath for a while, and then eventually you side with David or something like that. So tell me about your journey, Rob. What got you into law, and then what got you into PI?
Oh, sure. So, it's funny because lawyers kind of come in all breeds. There are some who do just stumble into it. For me, it's something I was always interested in doing. My dad actually went to law school briefly and couldn't keep going because he had to raise a family and earn a living. So he stopped. So I think he was always fascinated by it. He was a political science major. I always loved political science and history. So I was on the debate team in high school and college. So kind of coming through, it was a natural fit. And I always had in the back of my head that you'll go to law school. Also, it just, and when you get to law school, it's very empowering. The ideas how you can help people and how people are so disadvantaged. As good as our legal system is, it's very hard to navigate if you're a layperson. And lawyers are the bridge that let you do that, to navigate the legal system. So, that's basically my journey on how I decided to become a lawyer. No regrets whatsoever. I actually was a lawyer by the time I was 23. So kind of was on the fast track and went right through. And then in terms of my journey to become a personal injury attorney, you're right. I actually started as an insurance defense attorney, but before that, I actually had judicial clerkship. So I clerked on the Court of Appeals of Georgia for Dorothy Beasley, and that was during law school. And then when I came out of law school, I was a staff attorney for a judge in DeKalb County and did that for a couple of years. And he had been a personal injury attorney. So he would talk to me about his cases. We'd watch cases being tried. He always liked me in the courtroom. So I was in the courtroom for every single case tried for about 2.5 years when I was working for the judge. And then when I came out, it was a natural to go with an insurance defense firm because you really have to understand that side of the equation if you're going to be successful, I think, as a claims attorney. So my goal, though, when I went to the the defense firm, was I eventually would do personal injury work. And the defense firm I chose actually did some plaintiff's work, some pretty significant and serious cases. I worked on those while I was an insurance defense attorney. So I actually started on personal injury after leaving the judge, but did insurance defense as well as those major cases. Was with the defense firm for about 4 years or so, and then left them and started my own practice in 1994.
You just never look back.
Nope. I've been at it for 37 years, actually. I think I need to update my website. You said 25. So
Yeah, 25 is what's on the website, and I didn't have anything else to go on. I was like, that's a quarter of a century. That's a good amount. You you look very well preserved. But yeah, 37, that's amazing. That's awesome. I
I
won't
got
tell you that.
that's,
What's that?
I said I have my mom's gene pool. So,
There you go.
yeah. No, I started in 1987. So 37 years now.
Awesome. That is amazing. That really is cool. And I got to say, I think it's really neat that you started off doing doing the defense stuff, but you went in knowing that you wanted to do PI. It's almost like it feels to me like you could frame that like doing what I want to say, corporate espionage, right? You're going in and getting the playbook of the other team that you can use against them or something like that. And I work with a lot of injury law attorneys in my line of work.
Yeah.
And I've always respected injury law. Because I think you guys are, I mean, you said a minute ago, the lawyer is the bridge that helps you navigate the legal field. I think that's exactly right. But I mean, the law is so inaccessible to the average person. And somebody's been injured, they're out of work, they can't take care of themselves, they have no money, and you expect them to go and hire an attorney. Most people could never do that. The average attorney's fees are what, like $500 an hour minimum and going up from there. I'm sure in Atlanta it's probably even higher than that. But I love the model of PI because you guys work on a contingency fee. Everyone knows this, but I always talk it up because I just think it's such a great model. And it means that A, they don't have to have any capital outlay in order to hire you. And more than that, it means you guys, your interests are aligned with their interests. You want to get them the best possible result because you only get paid if they get paid, and you get a percentage of whatever they get paid. So they get paid very little, you get paid very, very little. They get paid a lot, then it aligns interests in the best possible way, which I think is really, it's just something you don't see that in almost any other industry, but you see it in PI, and I think it's a neat facet of that aspect of the law. So that's my thoughts on it.
I agree. Contingency fees contracts have been around for like 100 years plus, and the whole idea was to give access to the legal system to people who could not afford a lawyer, and it's held true through all these years. So many people would have a devastating outcome financially if there weren't personal injury attorneys willing to take their cases and pursue them, because insurance companies are not going to walk up and pay you the actual value of the case unless you have someone advocating it, because you don't even know what to tell them about the various aspects of your case if you don't have counsel. So we're glad to help people. That's how we see it, and that's what we do every day. Is working with folks whose lives are turned upside down by usually very serious accidents or or other events.
Absolutely. And a lot of people don't realize the amount of capital outlay you guys put into it as well. I mean, people are like, well, you're an attorney, you know what you're doing, you're just spending your time. But no, I mean, the average case, what does it cost to bring a case to trial?
Well, we have expenses, so we advance the expenses because people not only can't afford to pay our fee, they can't afford to pay for the filing fees, the court reporters, the experts, the exhibits for trial. So, if you're trying a medical malpractice case, you can spend $200,000 just on the expenses to get the case to trial. Less than 100, but still can be 20, 30, 40, 50,000. Depending on the type of auto accident or premise liability or other kind of case that you might bring. So it's very expensive. So we're risking our time. And generally speaking, we're risking those expenses. Technically, the client owes the expenses, but if you're not successful, clients don't have the money to pay those back. So you would waive those if that were to occur.
Absolutely. So again, I love that model because most people just don't have the ability to do that, and you guys make it possible. I think it's really cool. So let me ask you this. Now, we just got through a couple years ago with the pandemic, obviously, and I think everyone in different places, different areas, different states had a very different experience. So I'm curious, especially down in Atlanta, what was it like for you guys down there? Did everything shut down? Did it change the way you practice law? Has it made changes that stick around and made things better, made things worse? Did you ever have to do a Zoom deposition or a Zoom trial? Can you imagine being in front of a Zoom jury? And what do you think about that?
Oh, well, it's a great question. The pandemic really did affect a lot of things. And I vividly remember coming in March of 2020. I just taken a spring break with my family and my kids, and we gotten back, and it was percolating at that point. And we actually shut down our office, or excuse me, we went and worked remotely because we can't shut down our office. We have clients we have to take care of. So we shifted everyone home a day or two before the state of Georgia shut down and did the same thing. And we were at home for about 3 months. I remember I had a paralegal. She had just started with me about a week or two beforehand, and she was working from home. She's still with me today. So it drastically changed in that immediate time frame how you practice. A lot of things froze up, which is really hard for a person who's suffered a personal injury, because they're out of wages. They need to have medical treatment, and they need their claim to be moving forward, but the courts weren't really moving forward. So we learned a lot, but the things that changed, there were some things. We do a lot more Zoom depositions than we used to. They allow for depositions to be taken easier a lot of times. Now, I still depose important witnesses in person only, okay? But you can get secondary witnesses done by Zoom, and sometimes the other side will want to depose my folks by Zoom. So that stuck around. The second thing that stuck around is we will do mediations by Zoom still today. Okay. And mediations are a settlement conference where a lot of cases are settled. Most cases actually do mediate. So when you have a mediation, used to be you always be in person. You insist on the insurance adjuster being there. Pandemic hit, we had to do them by Zoom, and we found out they could be just as effective by Zoom doing the mediation as it was in person. So that was something that really stuck around for a long time. So, and there's a few other little changes, but those are the major things that have stayed with us.
Gotcha. Now, you mentioned mediation. If I'm not mistaken, last year it was, you were certified as a mediator and arbitrator. Tell me about that. How does that play into what you do?
Right. So I've regularly mediated cases for years, all the years I've been practicing. And it's a great process because it puts into the hands of the parties, the people we represent, as well as the insurance companies or the corporations or defendants, the ability to resolve their case without going before a jury. It's an alternative way of resolving your dispute. And, I've always done it from the advocacy standpoint, advocating for a client. It's great. The training as a mediator was great because it helped me see inside the eyes of the mediator and how they were perceiving resolving differences and perceiving bridging those gaps. So it added another dimension to my practice, is what I would say. And it's really worthwhile work because I'm not representing either side when I'm a mediator. Rather, I am an advocate for the folks to try to get it resolved. A success to me in a mediation as a mediator is that they've come to a meeting of the minds and agreed on a resolution to the case. But it helps inform the mediations I still do as an advocate because I'm seeing what the mediator is doing, how they're interacting, and I think I get better results because of the training I have as a mediator.
Just like the results being on the defense side for a little bit, right? You get to see it from both sides, and you have a better understanding of what's going on. Related to that, and related to what we talked about earlier a little bit, when it comes to seeing things from somebody else's perspective, I'm curious: have you ever been on a jury? Have you ever sat in the jury box and had to make that decision, or have you never been called up, or did you get called up but they knew your attorney and just dismissed you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I've been called up a couple times, but never made it to a jury. So everybody thinks you select a jury. You don't. You strike people. So you get 24 people in, and each side gets 6 strikes. So they get to eliminate 6 people off the panel, and the 12 that remain are the jury. So I was up in DeKalb County where I live a couple times on the panel. Once they find out I'm an attorney and my background, most attorneys don't want another attorney on the jury because they're afraid it's almost like an arbitration. That attorney will control the outcome. because everyone on the jury will have a tendency to listen to them.
Yeah. It's a weird situation because I could see there being benefits, but I guess it's a gamble. But I mean, every juror, I guess, is a gamble in a sense. But that's a gamble with somebody that if they're on your side could be a really great advocate, but if they're not on your side, could definitely harm your team. And I would imagine even if one side was in favor, the other side probably would still be like, no, I don't want them there. So I guess
Yeah.
it's just really hard to get through there. I do feel like it would be very beneficial to be on a jury. Do you guys ever what's the word I'm looking for? Um, focus group, focus test, act out some of your trials, and do you ever get to sit on the jury or hear them as they're deliberating to kind of figure out what's going on in their brains?
Right. So when you do a focus group, you don't sit as a member of the focus group, you're observing the group itself. And sure, you'll do focus groups in larger cases. And what it does is it identifies issues that you as an attorney may not readily recognize because you're looking at it through an attorney's eyes. But laypersons see cases very different than the attorney. So what we're trying to do is extract that information, that knowledge about how might a layperson view these facts and these circumstances. And you want to gather that information so that when you go to trial, you're able to deal with what a layperson is likely to think about your case. And they're very effective. You get there are attorneys who specialize in doing focus groups where they don't practice law so much as they really just run focus groups for other attorneys.
Gotcha. So going back to what we were saying earlier, you've been practicing law for over 25 years, 37
Yeah.
now. So you've definitely got some experience under the belt, which is awesome. Everyone knows if you go up to bat enough, you're not going to bat 1,000, right? And it's the same thing in law. You practice law long enough, you're not going to bat 1,000. So I am sure that in your career, Rob, you've probably had some setbacks, maybe some
Yeah.
challenges, failures, or moments that didn't turn out the way you thought they would turn out. But I'm a firm believer that there is no such thing as a failure as long as you learn from it. It's just a slow burn win. So
Yeah.
can you let my listeners know about maybe one or two times in your career, or you've had a setback, you've had what you'd consider a failure, maybe a ruling didn't come your way, maybe paperwork didn't get filed the right way, maybe a witness said the wrong thing, whatever it happened to be. But what did you learn from that, and how do you carry that forward to make sure you're always giving the best care to your clients?
Yeah, so I think we've all had setbacks or challenges in cases. I remember trying one case involved suing someone who was a drunk driver, and during that trial, he testified to that he had pled guilty to the drunk driving and what sentence he had had and what he had gone through. I wish I could reel that back and done that differently and excluded that information to the second part of a trial. So when you try that type of case, there's also a second part dealing with punitive damages. So it was helpful for them in terms of the outcome. So I was much younger, obviously, and you live and learn. And then there's always challenges in terms of, making sure you build the damages appropriately and, making sure you're listening and hearing your clients and what they're doing. After all these years, we do that really well. But probably in my younger years, I could have improved upon that. But I did. As you evolve and you start hearing clients, and I listen to clients very carefully because they often give you some of your best ideas. So, but yeah, that's one example, of where I would have done something a little bit differently in terms of the trial of the case.
Gotcha. Makes perfect sense. Well, the flip side of that though is success, right? I am sure in
Yeah.
37 years you've had some incredible wins. I mean, I see a bunch of the big figures obviously on your website. People like to lead with those. They're catchy, they're punchy. Some of the best wins are numerical, to be sure, and $7 million here or whatnot. Some of them are just helping people put their lives back together. So if I were to ask you, what's one or two of the things in your legal career, Rob, that you're most proud of? The proverbial feathers in your cap. When you fall asleep at night, one of the last things you think about that goes through your head before you fall asleep, what are the moments in your career that you're most proud of?
Well, I think we're most proud of when we have someone who's critically injured and we bring the resources to them that allow them to live a more full life. So I've had persons who are severely brain injured who you have to help them get a guardian and a conservator because they can't manage their own life anymore. and then you have to help them recover sufficient money because they were able to work or they were able to take care of their family, and they're not able to do that anymore. So I think those type of cases, and we've had a good number of them, are the cases where you feel most gratified that you've been able to help someone deal with it. The other types of cases, often you deal with people who suffered severe horrible losses because someone's been killed in their family. So, I've had a case where a drunk driver killed my client's husband, and she was badly injured. The fact that you can help get justice out of that case, where we were able to both be successful against the driver, but also against the bar that served that driver. Okay, so those are called dram shop cases, and those are very fulfilling because you make a bar stop and really think about, oh my gosh, we served this guy too much alcohol, or this gal, and they went out and they harmed someone or they killed someone, and then yes, they're having to answer for it, but hopefully what they're doing is they're making it better. So they're training their staff better. They're making sure they're not serving drunk drivers, and those make real differences in the future for cases. And for, I say for cases, in the future for other people who aren't harmed, because that bar is doing it better now.
Absolutely. Hopefully it helps to stave off future events, preventing this from happening, or at least reducing the likelihood and the frequency of such incidences, which is huge. What are the main kinds of injury law you guys practice? If you were to break down your cases by volume, what are the main kinds of cases you guys handle there?
Yeah, so we do a good bit, have done a good bit through the years in medical malpractice work. Doctors are wonderful. We love them. I have many doctors in my family and among my friend group. But doctors do make mistakes. And when they make mistakes, like other members of our society, if you're a truck driver, you make a mistake, or you're, a person who owns a business and you make a mistake and someone's injured, you're held responsible. Similarly, doctors are also responsible if they fall below the standard of care when they're providing treatment. So we handle medical malpractice cases, nursing abuse cases, where someone's in a facility, they've unfortunately been treated inappropriately. Often they suffer severe fractures or they may die. We certainly handle those cases. And then, of course, we handle premise liability and any transportation cases. I say transportation because that encompasses auto cases, motorcycle, boating. I've litigated a good number of boating cases as well. So we run the gambit if someone's been injured. And then one other kind of interesting area, and very few personal injury attorneys actually handle it, they'll touch on it, but we handle what's called false arrest and malicious prosecution cases. So let's say someone goes into a retail store and they're detained and then arrested because they are thought to have shoplifted, or an employer has an employee arrested because they are thought to have stolen from the employee, but the person actually didn't steal anything, didn't do anything. Well, being caught up in the criminal justice system is a scary proposition for anyone, because you're not looking at just losing your money, you're looking at losing your liberty. And that's a huge thing. So we represent those individuals. When those criminal matters have run their course and they've been dismissed, we'll get hired by the individual who's falsely accused to then sue the store or the employer or what have you, related to the false arrest, false imprisonment, or malicious prosecution. So those are real interesting cases for us. And they make a real difference because often those people have lost their jobs and their lives have been turned upside down. And we, by giving them financial resources, we help them get back, at least a part of their lives that they've lost.
That's awesome. I got to say, I've not really talked to anyone about false arrests and malicious prosecution. I think you might be the first attorney I've ever talked to that mentions that they do that. You're probably not the first one I've talked to that actually does it, but to mention that as an area that you guys cover, I think is a really fascinating concept. And I'm a libertarian at heart, so I don't like seeing anyone's liberty taken away for any unjust reason. And obviously, this does happen. I mean, if you do as they say, you do the crime, you do the time. Was that Mr. T or somebody?
Beretta, that's who it was. Don't do the crime if you can't do the time. That's the saying.
Right. That's right. That's right. So I'm a firm believer in that. I mean, obviously, if you break the social contract, you lose your liberty. Sure, that's fine. But there's a lot of people that lose their liberty unjustly, and obviously, that our system is supposed to be built in such a way. I talked to a lot of criminal defense attorneys as well. It's supposed to be built in such a way that it's better to let the guilty go than to imprison the innocent, and I think that's a good standard of law. And obviously, the law system is peopled by imperfect beings, and we're all, none of us are perfect. We all make mistakes, and the law also makes mistakes, but it's at least a good ideal to shoot for. It's good to know where the target is and always be aiming for it. So that's really neat.
Yeah, yeah, I enjoy that area a lot. It means a lot and gets me out of my box of other personal injury cases, and those are very serious cases. We've had people jailed for weeks on end
Wow.
because they can't afford the bail to get out, and they'll be sitting in jail for a crime they didn't commit, and won't be at home with the family, the kids. Can't support their families, lose their jobs. Almost always they lose their jobs. So they're very tragic cases, actually.
No, absolutely. And that somebody was talking just the other day and they gave an analysis and they said, here's two guys, Bob Smith and Steve Jones, whatever, and they both do the exact same crime and they both go to prison, but Bob Smith is out in, less than 24 hours because he can afford $1,500 bail or whatever it is. But Steve Jones is stuck for weeks specifically because he doesn't have $1,500. And for some people, $1,500 is not a lot. If I needed to spend $1,500, I could do it. I'm blessed to be in that situation. But there are people out there that could barely scrape together 400 or 500, let alone 1,500. And so they're just stuck. And then not only that, everything starts to snowball. Like you said, they lose their job, which means they lose their income, which means they have even less money to spend and everything else. So it really is it's a fascinating area of the law that I don't think a lot of people are very aware of. So I'm glad to see that there are people out there handling those kinds of cases, because I think that's important. Um, Related to that in a roundabout way, because I find that whole concept absurd, and I don't know what the solution is, but
Yeah.
I hope that there's something to get rid of that. I'm sure that in your 37 years, you've probably encountered a few things that are just absurd. Moments that make you shake your head and go, I can't believe this went that way. I can't believe they said this thing. I can't believe this is the thing that happened or whatever. And these always make for the best podcast fodder, I'll be honest. So what's one or two of the most absurd things, Rob, that you've encountered in your practice of law?
Well, um, I'll give you a broad category. How about that? And we'll talk about it that way. When we litigate medical malpractice cases, you'll get experts. So just to give you a sense, so we turn down we take about one out of every 300 or 400 medical malpractice cases that come across our door. So we're extremely exclusive on what we accept. And the medical malpractice cases that come in that we pursue generally involve a very clear breach of the standard of care where, this occurred, the standard is clear, and they violated the standard. And one of the things that we do see is, experts straining to explain, well, this isn't a breach of the standard of care, and here's why, where there's a disconnect, so that's one, broad category of things. We'll also see it in different category in auto accident cases where people are clearly at fault. They caused the accident. We were just talking about one of these depositions today, as a matter of fact, where the person's coming straight down the roadway. The other car has a stop sign, pulls right in front of them, and the crash. And they're saying, well, I don't think I'm at fault. Well, you left the stop sign into the road, and the other car didn't have a stop sign. So, so those, you run into those kind of absurd, defenses. So those are kind of the absurdities. I'm cautious about giving you specific examples in a case because, obviously we're guarded by attorney-client privilege, and I can tell you some more stories, but I don't want to cross those lines.
That's fine. I totally respect that. And
Yeah.
you have to be able to represent yourself in the way that you need to represent yourself. So that's totally fine. I am curious, you mentioned MedMal a couple of times. There was a study maybe a decade ago at this point, is Johns Hopkins, and they said that there could be as many as 250,000 deaths every year from medical malpractice, which would mean 1 in 10 people that dies is probably dying because of medical malpractice, which would make it one of the top 3 causes of death. Do you think that comports with reality, or do you think that's inflated or deflated?
I have a lot of respect for Johns Hopkins. They're a great institution. They do really good work. And I wouldn't be shocked if that was accurate. Medical malpractice cases are heavily defended, so it's very hard to come in there and pursue one. And a lot of cases we won't pursue because we will feel like, well, the doctor didn't give the best care, but maybe it barely met the standard or is not likely to be as successful. But we do feel like if you had a different doctor who was at this standard level or this care level, you would be alive today. Your person would be alive today. So I wouldn't be shocked if those numbers are accurate, actually. And I'm very close to the medical community. Again, my cousin's a doctor, my uncle's a doctor. I've got numerous family members on my wife's side who are doctors. Her uncle's a doctor. I have a lot of family friends who are physicians. Love them. They do great work. They are very important and vital. We do have to find that right balance. You do have to have a standard of care violation because you do have medical outcomes that aren't good, but they're not caused by the doctor. They're caused by the medical condition and what's occurring.
That makes perfect sense. And I would agree with that, I think. I do find it's one of those stats when you first hear it, it's just like, wow, really? Wow, that's shocking. And then you hear about certain states where they cap medical mal, like no matter what it is, you can't get more than $100,000. Like, sorry, we amputated the wrong leg, and you're never going to be able to walk again. But here's your 100,000. Good luck. I find that just fascinating in the worst possible ways.
Georgia had caps, so they had caps on personal injury cases and wrongful death cases, and the Georgia Supreme Court ruled that those were unconstitutional. But now there's a new case percolating up in the Georgia Supreme Court that's claiming that the cap on wrongful death cases is permitted. And the Supreme Court of Georgia will render a decision on that probably in the coming month or two. So we'll have to see how that goes. But that would cap wrongful death cases. If you have one defendant, if I remember right, maybe it's 250,000. And if you have multiple defendants, you can get upwards of 750,000 or $1 million. But for the death of someone, obviously to me that has enormously larger value. Now you can still cover your economic losses, but under Georgia law, you can recover for the whole value of the life, and the cap would limit that full recovery, which I think would be a shame. Yeah.
Gotcha. No, I agree with that 100%. That feels absurd. But again, it's hard to know. The law is always imperfect, and I understand why some people bring up these challenges to it as well, because they're like, well, we want to make sure people aren't abusing the system. Sure, that's fine. But yeah, how do you put a price on life, especially in an era of inflation and everything else? Like that seems like such a pittance, right? That seems like such a small amount to offer someone for sorry, your beloved is no longer with you, your breadwinner, your rock, the person that was, the closest person to you, your child, your mother, whatever it happens to be. Like, I just find that kind of inhumane at the end of the day.
Yeah, and there is some challenges on the other end where some verdicts have gotten to levels that wouldn't be sustainable for the medical profession. So we've seen those verdicts at $79 million or $100 million for one life. Every life is valuable. I'm not saying that verdict's per se wrong, but if all those wrongful death cases were coming out at those levels, you couldn't sustain the medical profession. So we've seen tort reform in Georgia recently, but I think it was a overreaction to that. I thought there was other ways to address it in a more thoughtful way. But either extreme can be challenging for the system. Only giving someone 250,000 for death is not appropriate, in my opinion, and it's very strained. And if every case comes out worth 79 or 80 million dollars for a wrongful death, then you're having a real challenge sustaining the medical profession because they have to pay premiums and insurance, and there's some inherent challenges there.
No, absolutely. And I'm very sympathetic to that. My father-in-law is a medical doctor, 40 plus years of practice, and he used to do obstetrics, and he got out of it because the medical malpractice insurance was just so high. He could, barely cover it. And he just went in to be a general practitioner and was that till at least till the end of his practicing days. I believe he's kind of stepped away from medicine now, but so I'm very sensitive to the concept, to be sure. I really am. It's rough. So let me ask you this. You talk with a lot of clients. You've talked with a lot of clients. I have to assume that people come into your office sometimes, Rob, with misconceptions about who you are, what you can do for them, what they should have done, will do, what they can expect, etc. What are one or two of the biggest misconceptions people bring into your office that you'd like to help people get past?
Right. So I think one of the important things is when someone comes in your office, as an attorney, you really have to make sure they understand what you're pursuing for them as an attorney, what you can pursue for them as an attorney, and the things that, really are outside the realm. So in other words, we can't come in there and serve as a prosecutor on the criminal side of matters. We can only handle civil matters. All prosecutors are employed by the state to prosecute a case. Georgia, interestingly, used to be able to hire private prosecutors back in the 70s, and they got rid of that. It was not a real effective system. So, but anyway, so you get a misconception of what can a jury award? Well, the jury can award you, for medical bills and pain and suffering and for lost wages, but the civil jury can't order that this person goes to jail or lose their medical license or things of that nature. So that's kind of the misconception. What can a jury award, and what can you recover, as a person who's been injured, and what's your sense of justice? Unfortunately, we can't give them their lives back or their bodies back or their loved ones back. We can only give them monetary compensation, then help them deal with, the impact on their lives.
Yeah,
So, but we clear up those misconceptions fairly early, when we talk to folks.
gotcha. On at the end of the day, that's the best you could do, right? Is help them pick up the pieces and carry on, and that's
Absolutely.
important.
No
What's
doubt.
your philosophy on client communications when it comes to the litigation process? How do you keep your clients informed and engaged? And how do you like I know that PI obviously can be very emotionally taxing for the client. Obviously they're suffering, and for the attorney as well. How do you manage those emotional aspects of your cases?
Yeah, so it's real important and both tie into each other. So communication is really key for an attorney. So we try to be always very transparent with the client up front, talk about what's involved, in the case, that they're difficult cases, especially when you have a disputed liability case. You need to make sure that they understand what's going on and that you may not be successful in the case because the jury could see it a different way. So, and the way we communicate is certainly in person, whenever we have those opportunities. But now we're communicating a lot by Zoom, where I'll have Zoom meetings with clients, saves them from getting into Atlanta traffic, which is bad, and coming to the office. So we'll communicate by Zoom, we'll communicate by email, we'll communicate by phone, we communicate by text message. So all of those are ways that we talk to them, and we are very empathetic to what they're going through. We've seen so many tragedies in our cases through the years. So we listen a lot and let them kind of talk about what their experience is. We don't send any client to a doctor, but we'll help them find the right professionals that are within their health plan, in the sense that we'll say, you might want to go to Emory University for this type of treatment or this broad group. We don't send to specific doctors. I know some attorneys do that. That's not our practice. That's how we communicate with folks, in terms of making sure that we can stay in touch with them. I have some clients who like to have a meeting every 3 to 4 weeks, and we do one by Zoom. Or some clients don't want us to update them until we have something, that is more significant or moving in the case, and then we'll just pick our times and loop them into what's going on.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, what would you say? We're living in an advanced technological world. Everyone has a little magical square that fits in their pocket. Um, Dash cams are things now, ring doorbells are things now. And as society is becoming more technologically advanced, what things are changing how you practice, particularly PI law? Like I have to imagine dash cams when they exist, when they're available, are super useful for pursuing a case. Would you recommend everyone has a dash cam? And what technological advances do you think are coming down the pipeline, Rob, that are going to change things even further?
Ah, that's a great question. I love it. Let's talk about some of the technologies out there and talk about some technology that's coming out. All right. So, in terms of everyone getting a dash cam, no, I think you can get one if it makes you feel better. Just remember it works both ways. If you have a dash cam and it catches you doing something wrong, you can't destroy that evidence. You have to produce it to the other side. So that's something to always keep in mind in terms of, if you choose to get a dash cam. One thing that changed the practices is many years ago now, but I'm dating myself, is event data recorders in cars. If you think about an airplane with a black box and it records the events, well, event data recorders in cars do the same thing for the car. So it'll tell you the speed of the car, what their speed was when they were braking and the accident occurred. A lot of information can be gleaned from that. We also have traffic cameras. Sometimes we can get evidence of the accident. I had one client. This is a good example of technology changing things. She was stopped at a traffic light behind an Amazon truck, and the Amazon truck backed into her and hit her hard. And you're like, wow, this is crazy. What got crazier, and this goes back to maybe one of your earlier questions of what's quirky, is the Amazon truck driver said that she hit him. So her and her father went around and got the cameras, the security camera footage from the various locations nearby, and were able to show the opposite occurred. So technology really changed the outcome of that case. Otherwise, she probably wouldn't be believed, even though she was telling the truth.
Yeah.
So that's an example of some things, technology wise, and Zoom, of course, is a big technology changer for us. I keep saying Zoom, any video conferencing service. But future technologies I think could impact personal injury work are the self-driving cars. And, those are not fully developed, and they are very worrisome from my standpoint, because you don't have a computer doesn't have the same ability to perceive things and react to it that a human being does. Everyone thinks what's a computer, it can react more quickly. Actually, the human mind, the human brain is still more powerful than any computer. And it worries me that for monetary reasons, there's a lot of effort to move, forward with self-driving cars, I think long before their time has come. So that's one issue. The other issue is AI. Sounds like a great idea, but I'll give you a good example. We had one of our neighbors was in the hospital, not a personal injury case, but it highlights the issue. And he's getting discharged, and the paperwork comes, and the paperwork says you had a collapsed lung, and no one's told him that. And he says, hold on a second, this says I have a collapsed lung. And the doctor looks at it and goes, oh my God, we have an AI program that is spitting this out. You have no collapsed lung. I guarantee it. I won't go into his condition, but you have this, not that. But AI is worrisome because people are becoming too dependent on it and thinking it instantly provides the answers. And the challenge is, if you're dealing with that in medicine or law or any other profession, engineering, accounting, what have you, if people coming along, especially the younger people coming along, say, oh, I got this off of AI, it's good, and they're not doing the hard work and making sure they're doing their own analysis and confirming it, I think you're going to get a lot of bad outcomes for people, whether it's in law or medicine or engineering or accounting or what have you. So
Yeah. No, that's fascinating. I'm on the fence about self-driving cars. I don't want one myself, but I almost wish everyone else was in one, right? I trust myself as a driver, but I don't trust everyone else. I will say this, the AI doesn't tend to text and drive, which is good, right? It doesn't tend to stop and adjust the radio station, which is good.
yeah.
I heard that the it's like the average person will clock 1 million miles before they get in an accident or something like that. And AI clocks like 1.4 million miles. So like it statistically is like 40% better overall, but some of that is still based on closed circuit driving and everything else. And I've seen videos of, a car, and actually I think it did the right thing, but like it was driving along, self-driving, and a lady fell in front of it and it swerved and like head-on collision into one car in order to avoid driving over the lady. And I'm like, well, did it cause more harm? Did it not? And don't know how that resolved. It is
Yeah.
fascinating. And who do you think, like, who's liable? Is, if it's a Tesla, is that Elon Musk or whoever's piloting his AI that's driving the car? Is it the user of the car? Is it somebody else? Like, where, and is there even an answer to that right now, or are we in a weird gray nebulous zone where there isn't a definitive answer for who's responsible when the self-driving car gets in an accident?
Well, I think the short answer is a lot of people can be responsible. So first of all, the manufacturer of the product can be responsible. So whether it's Tesla or another manufacturer of the self-driving car, they can be held liable if their technology did not work appropriately to avoid the accident when it could have avoided the accident. The other ones that could be responsible is even when you have self-driving cars, you'll have a person in the car sometimes because you'll have a software program, the person's in the car. So it's self-driving, but with a driver present. That driver can be responsible for failing to avert it, avert the accident. And then there's always questions about whether the person was injured. Could they have avoided it themselves? So there's some, potential liability issues to evaluate there. I'm with you on self-driving could be something at some point. When you said the statistics on the how long until you're in an accident, I think a more important statistic is how severe are the accidents for the humans versus a self-driving car. So if I have one fender bender every million miles and one really serious accident every 1.4, I'd rather have the fender bender driving than the person who's having the wrongful death or the brain injury or the fractures having been caused by the self-driving car.
Gotcha. No, I agree with that 100%. I mean, again, I'm on the fence about it. My wife is, in fact, a intense skeptic when it comes to science, technology in general. She doesn't trust any of it. She doesn't like Facebook knowing where she is on her phone. She doesn't like, any of those things. So I'm very empathetic to the idea that maybe this just isn't a good idea. I'm also, again, I lean libertarian. I'm very much let's try and stave off the brave new world if we can, right? And I do feel like every time we let technology have a little bit more control over our lives, we lose a little bit of our important autonomy, which I find problematic, at least a little bit.
Yeah, I think we definitely lose a little bit of autonomy with, the problem is, the young folks will say, I talked to so and so today and said, oh, when did you talk to them? Well, we texted at such and such a time. And they reference texting as if it's talking. And I'm like, if you texted, you texted. If you talked, you talked. Those are two different things. We're losing that human connection. I'll give you another example. When we go to a hearing now, we'll go by Zoom. Judges don't have hearings in person anymore very often. So we literally, it's a kind of a cattle call. We're going to go through what's the status of all these cases, and everyone comes on the Zoom. Well, I will see attorneys I've known for years on the Zoom, but I can't talk to them because we're on a Zoom. If we were at the courthouse, I would chat with them. We might even settle a case, that we have pending together because we ended up with some time together. Also, you're losing that human interaction with the judge. It's not as personable, and younger attorneys aren't getting that opportunity to be in a courtroom, and really live and breathe in a courtroom. So I appreciate the time savings on the Zoom, but I'd much rather have a hearing in person and show up and just say, okay, I lost a couple extra hours, or extra hour getting there and getting back, but I got to see the judge. I got to shake hands with my opposing attorney. I got to say hi to the calendar clerk or the staff attorney. Those human interactions are very valuable. And having worked in a courthouse, worked for a judge, we would have attorneys come by. This is back, when I started, and they would come by for a cup of coffee because my judge always had a pot of coffee on for the attorneys. And if they wanted to stop by chambers, they would stop in, have a cup of coffee, and inevitably I would sit down and chat with them. And it was the greatest learning experience in the world. You learn so much from these attorneys, but you don't have those opportunities anymore. And that's true with security as well at courthouses. Back then, you could just walk back to chambers and say hi to a judge, say hi to their staff. But now it's like getting through Fort Knox to get back to
Yeah.
see a judge. And for understandable reasons, but it's we've lost something there.
Yeah. No, I agree with that 100%. I was talking to somebody else the other day and they mentioned we talked about the pandemic and how everyone was working from home and it's great because so and so could do the exact same amount of work at home as they do here. They don't need to work a 40-hour a week. They can work 20 and still get it all done, which is great. And all of that is great. I think those are great things that came from this working from home
Model.
experiment model, whatever you want to say, right? But one of the things that they noted, and I thought this really hit home, is the problem is everyone's not hanging out together anymore. And so you literally lose this corporate identity, right? We are the law firm of, Katz Personal Injury Lawyers, or, we are the law firm of so and so and such and such. And when you all work together, the younger attorneys get a chance to learn from the older attorneys. It's the same kind of experience where you get to learn from the judge and get to know them and everything else. I do think that that's something that is definitely lacking in that model. I think that, and some of them are like, so we've moved to a hybrid where it's like 3 days a week you got to be in the office, but 2 days a week you can be wherever or whatever. And I think that might be a good workaround. I don't know if there's an absolute perfect workaround, but it is fascinating to see how we're adjusting as a species, as a community, as a group of individuals, as a country, to these changes coming down the pipeline. So.
Yeah, I think it's a great observation, by the way, because I will tell you one of the greatest learning experiences for a young attorney is being in the office and being able to pop your head into a partner's office or more senior associate's office and chat about a problem you have. You take 3, 4, 5, 10 minutes, whatever you take, but you've learned a lot. And if you're sitting at home on Zoom, you're not going to pop your head in on smaller issues. You're going to wait till you have something larger, but you learn so much on those small issues that you pop your head in on, and you talk to the partner about or to the older associate about. And we're losing those opportunities. I will say, so folks know when they retain our law firm, we are in 5 days a week in our office. So we had the 3 months or so we were home at the beginning of the pandemic. We came back. The one thing we bridged over from the pandemic years is if my staff has something at home, a sick child, or they have to deal with a repair at home or something they need to be at home, then of course they could go home and be at home and work from there if they don't want to lose a paid time off day or anything. But we are in office and it's so valuable because we have conversations every day on all our clients' cases that really lift the boats on those cases. So I think it's real important and valuable. That's a question if you're hiring an attorney, ask them, say, are your attorneys in office every day? Or are they at home? And if they say, well, we're actually totally hybrid, we're all at home, I'd probably pause a little bit on retaining that firm. Maybe you do, but I would probably say, I really want a team together, the team working together in person, so they can exchange those ideas about my case.
Yeah. At the very least, I feel like that would be a yellow flag, right? It's maybe not a disqualifier, but it's definitely like I'd look at a little further. Make sure that there's that cohesive unity going on there in some capacity, because that
Yeah,
could affect the outcomes of your case. It could affect the advice that the person representing you is giving or getting or what have you.
absolutely.
So
No
100.
doubt. Absolutely.
Well, Rob, I really do appreciate you taking this time to talk with me today. We've already hit our hour mark, and I want to be respectful of your time that you've given me. So here in a minute, I'm going to ask you my two closing questions, just to give those to you to percolate on before we jump over. Question number one is, if we go back in time, speaking of young lawyers, and we meet young Rob Katz, fresh out of law school, what advice would you give to yourself and why? And number two is, if I gave you my magic pen. Now, this magic pen here is from a monastery in Atchison, Kansas, kansasmonks.org. And I think one of the priests there must have blessed it, because it's a miraculous pen that can strike laws from the books, edit laws that are on the books, or add new laws to the books. So if I were to give you this miraculous pen, what law would you strike, edit, or change, and why? While you percolate on that, we're going to jump over one more time and take a look at your website. Again, I am talking with Rob Katz of the eponymous law firm that bears his name. You can visit him online at robertnkatz.com. You can also call for a free consultation, as always, at 888 426 2100. That's 888 426-2100. They are a full service injury law firm down in the lovely state of Georgia, the Peach State. And they have multiple offices, and they are in person 5 days a week, as we just heard. So if you have been injured, if you have faced any kind of a personal injury, vehicle accident, work-related injuries, nursing home abuse, false claims, whistleblower issues, burn injuries, TBIs, wrongful death, everything else, please feel free to reach out to them. And again, we will have their information down below as always. Our final sponsor for today, speaking of AI, is Habanero Social. What if Google could send you free customers or free clients every single month? With Habanero Social, it's not a fantasy, it's a reality. Habanero Social's AI-powered platform optimizes your Google business profile to attract more local customers effortlessly. From cranking out high-quality content to managing reviews and fine-tuning your local SEO, Habanero Social handles it all while you sit back and watch your business grow. 85% of local searches happen within the Google Maps pack. That's the place you need to be to capture those clients. An optimized Google business profile doesn't just show up, but it engages and it builds trust. It increases clicks and ultimately boosts your business. And that's why Habanero Social is so confident that what they do works. They guarantee a 3 times ROI for everyone that works for them. If you don't make at least 3 times more than you spend with them, they will refund your money or they will work for free. Stop wasting time on old school tactics. Habanero Social automates everything you need to rank higher and engage better and drive more customers, more clients, more phone calls to your business. If you're ready to get started without lifting a finger, visit habanerosocial.com right now and let their AI, Samwise, do all the heavy lifting entirely risk-free. That's habanerosocial.com. Alrighty, so Rob, we travel back in time and we don't break the space-time continuum, and we see young Rob Katz, and you're able to go up and just whisper maybe 1 or 2 sentences in your ear of advice. Obviously, other than the obvious, which is, of course, look out, there's a thing called Bitcoin, and when it comes around, buy it for like $70 a coin, get as many of them as you can, and hold them because it'll hit 100K, right? But outside of the obvious advice, maybe stock advice as well, right? It's Back to the Future 2, whatever it was. But outside of the obvious stuff, what advice would you give yourself early on in your career as you were starting out as an attorney?
Yeah, so I think the advice I would give myself, which I do extremely well now, but when I was younger, I think we all were challenged about it, is really talk to your clients regularly in terms of and listen to them and their ideas. Because clients sometimes have the best ideas because they are living through the experience and they are seeing it through the eyes of what a potential juror might even see it, how a juror may see it. So you do that initial interview, you get a lot of good information, but keep talking to them, keep getting updates on what's going on with them, keep talking to them about how you're pursuing the case, and really genuinely be open, receptive to the ideas that they share. We are very open, receptive, have been for decades now, but you're talking about a very young Rob Katz back in the 80s, that would be the advice that I would give.
Well, it's good advice. It is. That's human advice too, right? Listen to people, talk to people, but it definitely applies very nicely to your practice of law. So question number 2, I give you the miraculous pen. And again, with this pen, you can strike a law from the books, edit a law that's on the books, or add a new law. And this can be a law with national, even international ramifications, or this can be that stupid little law that makes you fill out forms in triplicate 8 times a week, or just getting rid of parking tickets. You can make one change. What change are you going to make?
All right. So I'm going to keep it limited to my area of practice because there's a lot of laws on the books from a national standpoint that, yes, I would easily revise. But let's keep it focused on my world and in this case, in Georgia. Georgia just passed tort reform. And like I said, I think, there were things that could be done that would be thoughtful, that would be appropriate. But one thing that they passed is to bifurcate trials. So you try the liability part first, and then you have a second trial on the damages part. Well, I think that costs an enormous amount of money, really, for both sides. And it also costs valuable time for the jurors and the judges and the attorneys. And I would strike from the books that you're going to bifurcate the liability side and the damages side. I think those should be tried as one case, as they have throughout our history, by the way. So this is brand new, never really has been tried until, this law is passed, and maybe there may be a state or another state or two that's done it. But over the last 200 years of our jurisprudence, this is not something that we've done. So I would not do that. I might put in other rules to kind of navigate or address the challenge that they were trying to address with bifurcation. I just don't think bifurcation of the liability and the damages part was the best way to go.
Interesting. You're actually the second attorney that's made that suggestion, and I've done 100 interviews, I think, and the other guy was just like 3 or 4 interviews ago. I think he was a PI down in Florida, if I'm not mistaken, but he had the exact same answers to the bifurcation. I'd never even really considered that, and he's like, "No, this thing it's terrible, and it needs to change because it breaks everything up. So if I can make one change, that would be the change." So it's really neat that that's the one that you chose as well, because I'd never even really encountered that until very recently, and clearly it's an issue at least in some areas. So that's fascinating. Well, Rob, I just want to say thank you very much for joining me on the podcast. Again, thank you for being willing to move up a little bit as well. I appreciate the consideration on time. I do like to let my guest have the last word. Are there any parting words of wisdom or final thoughts that you would like to leave our listeners with?
Sure, I'll keep it limited to my area though. If you've suffered a really bad injury, don't go it alone with the insurance companies or trucking company or corporations or even with an individual on the other side. You have very important and valuable rights. Obviously, you're welcome to call our law firm, but there are many good law firms in Atlanta, in Georgia, throughout the United States who can assist you. You're going to miss something, or you're likely to. Get good counsel. And if you get good counsel, you're generally going to have a good outcome.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. So that is awesome and very sound advice. Well, Rob, thank you again very much for joining me on the podcast today. This has been The Attorney Post. I am, as always, your host, Justin West. I have been chatting with Rob Katz of robertincatz.com. That's Katz Personal Injury Lawyers, or Katz and shoot, I lost it again. I wrote it down. Where did it go? Which one was it?
Katz and Fleming.
Fleming. I keep wanting to say Griffin for whatever reason. Katz and Fleming.
That's okay.
Anyway, as always, we will have links to his information down below. This podcast, though it does deal with a lot of different legal topics, does not itself constitute legal advice. And if you have a legal issue, you should always seek the advice of a competent attorney in your area who focuses on a matter that you need help with. Now, obviously, if you're in the Georgia area or outside, and you are injured, I think that Rob and his firm would be a wonderful resource for you. So again, highly recommend you check them out. See the links down below. And again, consultations are always free. So there's no cost to learn what your rights are and at least get an idea of where you stand. As far as the podcast goes, if you're watching us on YouTube, we always appreciate a like, a subscribe, a comment, whatever it happens to be. If you're on any of the podcast repositories, please feel free to also rate us there as well. But the most important thing you can do is if you know someone that would benefit from the information in this podcast, please share it with them. Because again, if they don't know their rights, they don't have any. And the number one way you can help them know their rights is by giving them the information they need to help themselves. So if they've been injured, please feel free to share this podcast with them. And until next time, this is Justin West, your host, saying thank you guys very much for being with us and have a good one.